Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone around the world. Hello and welcome to this very special NativeScript webinar. We are extremely excited to introduce you today to NativeScript 3.0. This is the next major release of our open source framework you use to create robust cross-platform native apps with JavaScript. As a quick introduction, my name is Rob Lauer. You can reach me on Twitter at Rob Lauer, and I'm on the developer relations team here at Progress. I will be your MC today as we shift between all of our great speakers. It just so happens that today you'll be hearing from everyone on the NativeScript developer relations team, but more on them in a second. If by any chance the name Progress confuses you and you were expecting Telerik, have no fear. Yes, NativeScript started when we were Telerik. And Progress acquired Telerik a few years ago, hence the name change. But rest assured, NativeScript is a huge part of Progress's plans going forward. The NativeScript framework is free, open source, always will be, and Progress is the company standing behind it. Now I realize it is 2017 and we can launch rockets into space and then land them on a pad in the ocean, but the reality is that webinars are still not a solved problem. By that, I mean technical issues may arise and you may lose video or sound. If this happens, please use the Q&A window provided and we will help as best we can. No matter what, worst case scenario, a full recording of this webinar will be made available on YouTube shortly after we're done here today. And how exactly will you find out about the recording? Well, one really easy way is by following us on Twitter at NativeScript. We love Twitter as we find it to be a very easy way to communicate with our growing developer base. And speaking of Twitter, right now we are answering your questions live. Just use the Ask NativeScript hashtag and our team members will be happy to respond to your questions. I'm sure we can get this hashtag trending as if Donald Trump himself tweeted it out. And if you've jumped on the Slack bandwagon, you'll be pleased to know there's a vibrant NativeScript community at nativescriptcommunity.slack.com. It's a great resource to interface with other NativeScript developers. We also have a relatively new online forum, which is a great place for questions about NativeScript. It's available at forum.nativescript.org. Now, if you're here, you probably know the basics of NativeScript already, but if NativeScript is new to you, welcome. With NativeScript, you create truly native apps for both iOS and Android with one JavaScript codebase. You structure your app with HTML-like markup, you style it with CSS, and your code behind logic is all powered with JavaScript. Now, the best way to learn NativeScript is by visiting our free tutorials at docs.nativescript.org. We have two end-to-end tutorials, one for plain JavaScript and one for Angular and TypeScript. So yes, NativeScript is also extremely flexible. You can develop with plain vanilla JavaScript, TypeScript, and/or Angular. It's really up to you. We will meet you wherever you are most comfortable. And don't confuse NativeScript with Apache Cordova or PhoneGap. NativeScript doesn't use web views like hybrid apps. NativeScript is real native performance, leveraging those same web skills you've honed over the years. And of course, you can visit us at nativescript.org to find any and every resource you need to get started. Now, thanks to all of you who have already tried NativeScript and are using it today to build high-quality production apps, we are seeing a tremendous growth in downloads and usage of NativeScript, and that is due to all of you out there. And if you're the kind of person who likes to know who else is using NativeScript, I can assure you that some of the biggest names out there today, like Fidelity, Southwest Airlines, SAP, and Verizon, they're all building apps with NativeScript. All right, that's enough of me blabbering on. Let's shift the focus to our speakers today. As I mentioned already, you'll be hearing from the NativeScript developer relations team. First up is TJ Van Tol, developer advocate extraordinaire. Then the fabulous Jen Looper will take the stage. And we're going to finish with our friend across the Atlantic, Sebastian Widelek. So make sure to follow these folks on Twitter using the handles you see here. You can pester them directly and hear all about the latest and greatest from NativeScript. All right, one final reminder, make sure you use the Ask NativeScript hashtag on Twitter if you have any questions at all. All right, TJ, take it away.
Awesome, thanks Rob. My name is TJ and I am a developer advocate on the NativeScript team. And today I'll be talking about what's new in NativeScript 3.0. Specifically, I'll be talking about what we changed and also why we made those changes. Now, if you've been following along with the NativeScript 3.0 release, maybe you've seen some of our blog posts, maybe you've tried out the release candidate, you'll know that one of our major focuses of this release was on performance. We really wanted to improve how fast and snappy NativeScript apps are. So we're going to spend some time diving into the specifics of what changed in NativeScript from a performance perspective and what you can expect for your own apps. But let's start by just looking at a big list of what changed in NativeScript 3. Before we actually start going through like line by line here through the list of things that changed, what I want to mention right off the top is we designed NativeScript 3 to be a fairly seamless upgrade process for most people. Even though you see quite a few things here, the only ones you're really likely to hit are the ones on the bottom of the screen here. We migrated to TypeScript 2.2, which involves some configuration updates. We bumped our support for Angular up to Angular 4. And we've also made some various other small changes to the NativeScript modules. For most apps, this should be fairly simple. Your update might be as simple as just updating a few version numbers in your package.json file. If you're an Angular user, you'll have a few more changes to make, some more dependencies to update, and some TypeScript configurations to change as well. But this also shouldn't be too bad. Now, we're not going to go over each and every little dependency and version number here as part of this talk. My colleague Sebastian will be talking about the Angular 4 upgrade a little more later in this webinar. And we have a full migration guide that talks about really everything you need to know about moving your apps to NativeScript 3 in a whole lot of detail. If you've checked out the migration guide and you're still having troubles getting your apps up and running with NativeScript 3, the NativeScript community forum is a great place to reach out for help, ask any questions that you might have, post any problems that you might have been running into so that we can help you out. With that, I want to shift our focus back to this list here and specifically talk about the top 3 things that appear here. These items are important because these are the ones that are really more related to the performance you'll see in your NativeScript applications. Before I get into what each of those individual changes are, I want to just back up a little bit and talk about performance in NativeScript apps in general. There are 2 main things that we measure for the performance of NativeScript apps. The first of these is startup time, and this one's the one that's a little bit easier to understand. Startup time is quite simply the amount of time that passes between when the user taps your app's icon on their device and the time where your app is sort of fully initialized and ready to use. In NativeScript apps, the main cost here is initializing a JavaScript virtual machine. It's basically the chunk of code that we use to interpret JavaScript at runtime. And then also feeding that JavaScript VM all the JavaScript that is part of your application that needs to run. Now, this is a number we measure with each release and are constantly trying to optimize. You've probably seen our Webpack plugin, which can really help reduce this number by reducing the amount of JavaScript we have to feed into the JavaScript VM. But the focus of this 3.0 release is on runtime costs, or really everything that comes after that initial startup process. This could include things like how long it takes us to paint your user interface, how long page transitions take, and so forth. To put that all in context, though, I want to give you a concrete example. For instance, suppose that you use an action bar component as part of your NativeScript app. For us to actually paint that action bar on the screen, to actually render it, there are several different steps that we need to take. The first is we need to parse your template. We need to discover what UI components that you want to use as part of your page. Once we find that action bar, we have to instantiate a TypeScript class. For each UI component we find, we instantiate a TypeScript class that essentially contains the logic that controls each individual component. So in this case, it'll be an action bar class. The first thing that action bar class will do is instantiate an underlying native control that's actually used to implement this. So on iOS, that'll be a UI navigation bar, and on Android, that will be an action bar control. Next, we'll have to parse attributes. See that title attribute up there? We have to make sure that makes it to the UI navigation bar and the action bar on Android. And then finally, we have to deal with both layout and also any CSS properties that you might have applied. Maybe, for example, you applied a CSS background color to this action bar that we also have to pass along to the native controls. All of these tasks are things that we can and do monitor the performance of. What you're seeing here is an app that has a variety of these performance-related test cases. This one in particular is available in the main GitHub repo, so github.com/nativescript/nativescript. What the test that you're seeing in this GIF does is measure the time it takes to render a repeater with a whole bunch of items in it. Now, we use these tests to, first of all, give us a benchmark. We test these numbers on common devices with every release of NativeScript in an attempt to catch performance regressions, and also just see how we're doing across releases. The other thing tests like this let us do is to profile common NativeScript use cases to look for performance pain points that we can optimize. And that's really how we came up with these items for the NativeScript 3 release. With that background in mind, let's dive into the specifics here. The first item on this list is a new visual tree class hierarchy. You'll recall from my example earlier that each and every UI component has an underlying TypeScript class that contains all the logic and stuff needed to implement that control. What I didn't mention before is that each of these controls has a set of parent classes that it inherits some behavior from. Now, prior to 3.0, this chain could be quite involved, from view, proxy object, bindable, etc. So one of the things we did is we tried to change that. We made that class hierarchy a lot simpler, both so these classes were just, quite frankly, easier to work on. If you've ever wanted to contribute to NativeScript or you've built some NativeScript plugins that work this way, you'll probably appreciate the simpler structure. But also there were some real performance gains to be had from simplifying the structure these controls use. The next thing was a rewrite of our property system. Each and every time you apply an attribute or a CSS rule to a NativeScript UI component, we have some code under the hood that actually applies that property to whatever native control we render that user interface component with. For example, this is Brad Martin's excellent Fab Button plugin. And one of the things the Fab Button plugin does is let you apply a background color, either as a property or through CSS. Now, the code under the hood to actually implement this wasn't as easy as you might like it to be. With 2.5, it could be fairly verbose, especially when you get down to the register handlers portion, about 2/3 down, where you have to deal with things like a style property changed handler and all these verbose things that you probably don't really want to deal with. I mean, when you go back to the markup, this is really a fairly simple control. So with 3.0, we've simplified that process considerably. And this code here can now be written a lot simpler as just a getter and setter that either gets the appropriate property from the native control or sets it. Now, don't worry too much about the specifics here, especially if you've really never dove deep into the NativeScript source code or NativeScript plugins. What's important here is that, again, we've simplified how a lot of these APIs work to make things like this easier to build. And the simplicity has also given us some performance boosts that benefits each and every NativeScript app out there. Last on my list is a revamp of our layout measurement system. Now, this is, again, a fairly internal thing that you're very unlikely to hit in your average NativeScript app. The one thing I'll mention here is that because of this refactoring, you now have the ability to provide border, margin, padding, or any of these measurements in your NativeScript apps in pixels, for example, like this. Now, for most situations, we think you'll want to stick with the default measuring system as in NativeScript apps. That unit is device independent, so it handles things like devices with different pixel densities quite well. But where you do really need an explicit pixel dimension, you now have the ability to do that. To wrap things up, between all these changes with the new class hierarchy, a new refactored property system, and a revamped layout measurement system, our tests show that your average NativeScript app will get something around a 20% rendering improvement, which is pretty cool considering that for the most part, all you have to do is update your version numbers to take advantage of this optimization. You should see this boost in just how fast NativeScript is able to paint your interfaces, but you should also see snappier page transitions and such as well. Just how much of a boost you see is really dependent on the sort of apps you're building and also the types of devices that you're running on. You can see some differences between Android and iOS in our raw numbers, but all apps should gain a little just by doing a simple upgrade. And even though I've been stressing that a lot of these changes are internal and are unlikely to affect your apps, if you do have an app that was getting into some of the internals with NativeScript, maybe you were building some custom user interface components, or maybe you had a few NativeScript plugins that you built and distributed, then you might have hit some of these changes. If you find you're not getting what you need from our migration guide, or you still have some open questions, the NativeScript forum is again a great place to reach out for help. We even have a plugins topic that's really a perfect place to ask any of these 3.0 related questions. Finally, the last thing I'll mention is that performance improvements are always ongoing here at NativeScript, and we have a number of additional optimizations in the works. For startup times, we're looking to take advantage of this feature known as Android Snapshot Builds. The JavaScript VM we use on Android, V8, essentially has this feature that lets you preload some JavaScript to speed up your startup times, and we're looking to take advantage of that. We're also doing a lot of work to really profile the Angular app startup experience because we believe that there's some optimizations that we can take advantage of to speed that process up. And for runtime costs, we have a few things as well. We think we can do some work reusing native elements so that we don't have to continuously allocate some of these native controls that we're going to be using over and over again. And we also want to do some work to keep older pages alive after navigation, meaning if the user navigates from page A to page B, if we keep page A and its components alive, then it makes backwards navigation if the user goes back from B to A a whole lot faster. All of these optimizations are things that we hope to ship to you in the near future. But for now, go ahead and upgrade to NativeScript 3. Make sure to take advantage of these performance optimizations that we just shipped. And we're not done yet. So I covered what's new with the NativeScript modules and the NativeScript runtimes, but my colleague Jen Looper is going to talk a little bit about what's new in the NativeScript CLI and also talk about some new tooling that we have on the way. Pretty exciting stuff. So Jen, do you want to take it away?
Thanks very much, TJ. Hey everybody, Jen here. I'm a developer advocate at Progress, and you can follow me on Twitter at Jen Looper. And I'm so excited to talk about some of the really cool things that we're able to show you associated with this 3.0 release. So let's take a look at what we're going to look at today. So the first thing we're going to talk about is Sidekick, which is actually a sneak peek because it hasn't been released yet. So you have the privilege of looking at something that's not even released yet. Sidekick is a really great tooling set that will allow you to get up and running really quickly with NativeScript. Another thing I want to talk about are the CLI improvements associated with the 3.0 release. I also want to talk about NativeScript UI and how it's kind of kept up with these changes. And then last but not least, my personal favorite, the NativeScript Ambassador Program Initiative, which I'm actually running. So I'm really invested in this and I want to show you what we're doing behind the scenes with our community. So the idea behind Sidekick is that every hero needs a sidekick. Wonder Woman had Etta Candy, and of course Batman had Robin. And you, the NativeScript developer, you need your own sidekick, so we created one for you. So let's just take a step back for a second. One of the attractions of NativeScript is actually that web developers can quickly get up and running building a mobile app using the languages they already know and love, like JavaScript and CSS, and Angular if you choose. But actually setting up and maintaining SDKs like Android's SDK, I mean, you know this is true. Setting up all the emulators and Xcode for iOS development, it's a pain, right? So using your web dev tools to build and debug and deploy and to test your mobile apps is often actually kind of an inadequate experience for you. And we realize that you need tooling that you can get quickly set up to manage your source control, to manage your testing, and to manage the continuous delivery of your apps. And also, in fact, some help in setting up the structure of your app would be much appreciated according to our analysis of what a mobile developer actually needs. So, bottom line, if you have a deadline and you're on a tight budget, you need proper tooling to help you become a productive cross-platform app developer. And so we wanted to introduce to you NativeScript Sidekick. So Sidekick is actually a desktop tool which has the most essential productivity tools to create mobile apps all bundled in together. So it has starter kits, and starter kits make it easy to create new applications based on best practices in the field. So you would start with a starter kit, and you'd add pages representing common UI patterns. And we've made it look really great so that you too can become an awesome designer. It also has cross-platform development helpers to help you provision devices, to help you, for example, manage iOS provisioning profiles, which really can be complicated for iOS. It also has the ability to do builds in the cloud and using cloud emulators. You can build iOS, for example, apps on Windows or Linux machines. And we created cloud builds and used cloud emulators to basically get you up and running quickly and easily. We also included the capability to manage plugins. You can integrate plugins to boost your mobile app functionality, and you can install plugins from right within Sidekick and kind of keep track of the versions that you're using. We also have some really nice debugging capabilities. So Sidekick is designed to be scalable in that we integrate with your team's preferred tooling. So maybe your team prefers like this lightweight editor like Sublime, and in this case, we'd give you a standalone debugger. But for Visual Studio Code and more advanced IDEs, we're creating this light extension, which will expose a debugger inside Visual Studio Code. And we directly support some IDEs with complex integrations. So this is pretty exciting going forward. We also support CI integrations, so we run on every operating system, and QA integration tests can actually leverage these integrators. For example, if you need to support your Travis continuous integration build, we do support that. So this sounds really awesome. When can I get my hands on it? When can we use Sidekick? Well, the private beta actually has already occurred within our experts program, and you can expect the public beta in summer, so watch in late June, early July for the public beta, and watch for a release in the fall. So this is really exciting, and we're so happy to show you some brand new tooling to support the NativeScript developer. So let's talk now about a couple of changes that have been made to the CLI. So one of the changes is that the plugin find and search command is removed, as it actually wasn't used. You can always go to the plugin marketplace at plugins.nativescript.org to find a plugin that you need. But the big one that I want to talk about in demo actually is that the live sync command is removed in favor of TNS run, which now automatically performs live sync and it watches for changes under the hood. So let's take a look at how this works. So I'm going to fire up an app that I've been working on called QuickNoms. It's actually a recipe app, and it uses Firebase behind the scenes to get your recipes in real time. I'm going to go ahead and fire this up on iOS and on Android. I have the native emulators installed on my machine here. Here comes the Android emulator, and here comes on my iPhone 6. So it's a race. Let's see which one comes up first. But what I did basically is that I just did a TNS run iOS and a TNS run Android, and it brings up from a cold start these two emulators, and it's relatively fast. So here is my iOS emulator. Android always takes a little bit longer on my machine, and we'll close weird errors that occur. But I do have hardware acceleration installed on this machine, thank goodness, so the Android emulator does eventually come up. So here comes QuickNoms, and what I'm going to just demo is how live sync is occurring behind the scenes, even though I'm just using TNS run. So I'm going to change the title in the action bar, and you can see that it just refreshes super quickly on both of these emulators. So we'll get rid of hello, and it just goes right back to where it started, even on Android. And I can make changes here with the action bar color, and it's just going to snap red, and come on Android, snap red. There we go. And we can just go right back to the nice brown color that I've chosen, and because it matches the logo. So you can see how just with TNS run, this just moves really quickly. Now another thing I want to demo today is an addition to the CLI that's actually a kind of a coming soon item, but it's actually ready to use. So I'm just going to show you how to go ahead and use NativeScript extensions. And my colleague Rosen was kind enough to create a demo for me. So I'm going to use his demo, and I'm going to show you one that I created myself of how you can go ahead and extend the CLI to really make it your own. So you or your team may have a serious need for the CLI to do something really custom and, for example, kick off a Travis build or some such thing. Well, I did something a little more trivial, which is to allow the CLI to print out ASCII versions of pictures of cats. So here is how I went about and did this. So in this project, we basically are registering a service, and then we're calling a command. And I have installed an NPM module to allow an image to be imported and for ASCII characters to be output. So I have this can execute method here that allows me to test whether I've given the CLI everything it needs. And then I go ahead and run this execute method, and that actually executes the command and kicks off the running of this particular command that I want to have, creating the ASCII image. So here we go. We just register the command of kittenme, and that tells the CLI that I'm going to use kittenme as the command. So let's see how this looks. So I just run TNS extension list to take a look at what extensions I have imported into my TNS, and I already have Rosen's extension called Hello World. So if I would go ahead and run TNS hello-world and then pass through the parameter gen, I get printed back, hello Jen, NativeScript loves you. Well, thank goodness for that, because I've given a lot of love to NativeScript. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and install a new extension, and that's this little Kitten Me project that I have on my desktop. So I just install Kitten Me, and it pulls it right in. So successfully installed the extension. Now I can run it. So it's TNS extension list again, make sure it's installed. And it is, that's good. And now I can go ahead and run it. So it would be a TNS, Kitten Me, and then I tell it which image I want to have changed over to ASCII. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, and here comes Inky, this little cat, and it actually looks pretty good. Let's try another one. I have one called, I think, Bengal. So that's also on my desktop, and we'll just pull it right in. So that actually looks a little strange. Looks like the cat is kind of triggered. Okay, last try, just for fun. So I have a little cat, and his name is Inky. So we'll just do TNS Kitten Me, Tom JPEG, pull in the JPEG, and my CLI suddenly looks really scared. But that's okay, because this is all to show you that basically you can go ahead and extend the CLI almost any way you want. It's pretty easy to do, and I think it'll really help you customize your CLI integrations. Now I'd like to just turn your attention to NativeScript UI, which is our library of really beautiful widgets that you can use to create nice controls on your mobile apps. Some of it is free, some of it is paid, and it's comprised of many different UI elements. There are great charts, list views, the side drawer is really nice and super convenient to just include. This calendar I think would be super useful. I'd actually like to use this in one of my apps. There is a very nice data form, and that's convenient because nobody wants to design a form on a mobile app. That's just a hassle. There are these really cool gauges, and then there's the autocomplete, which is something that you might want to use when you're creating nice searches. So to take a look at what's new in NativeScript UI, you can always check out our blog. We have basically kept up with this release with NativeScript 3.0 release, and so we have made sure that the compatibility is in parity, and there are some new things coming soon. So with the NativeScript UI, just keep a watch on the blogs because we're planning to continue to polish this suite. We have some really cool multiple template support for list view coming soon. Autocomplete box is going to get support for Angular, and then we have some very interesting tab view components coming on the horizon. Tabs are hard on mobile, so we're making sure that we've got you covered. And then there's this major new feature coming for the calendar, which is the day view. So that would be super interesting, I think, for your apps. And just to remind you, you can always head over to the Telerik docs. Under DevTools NativeScript UI release notes, you can always check what's new. And the last thing I want to talk about is a really exciting program that I've launched within the community, and it's called the NativeScript Ambassador Program. So this is a cohort, a small cohort right now, of young junior developers, students, younger people working in startups who are interested in leveling up their career by learning NativeScript. So I'm pairing them with very carefully chosen NativeScript experts as mentors, and they're going to be working over the summer to boost up their GitHub repo and to blog and learn as much about NativeScript as they can to really level up their skills. So the folks in this program include some of our most awesome community experts, including Sherman Chen in Asia, Alex Ziskind, who you may know from his awesome courseware, Nick and Mike Branstein, the Brosteins. They've been featured as developer experts on progress.com. We have Nick Raboy, who's also a great educator, and he's been working also to create courseware. We have the plugin team of OC Fortune and Brad Martin. You know Trini Wiz on Slack and Brad. They're awesome at making plugins, and they're going to be heading up a team who is really interested in making really exciting plugins. So I just want to let you know about these experts who are mentoring NativeScript ambassadors. The first cohort is going to be in 2017, and I hope to make this program really big and really exciting as we move forward. So look forward to some really exciting things happening in the community. And I will turn over the mic now to my colleague Sebastian. So thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, Jen. That was pretty cool. My name is Sebastian Vitalet, and I'm a developer advocate at Progress. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, I am Sebavita. So today I want to talk to you about a few things. One, what's football, about Angular v4 support, and about support for Chrome DevTools Network tab, which is available for Android, and about what you can do with Code Push. So when I talk about football, I mean actually the sport where you take the ball and you kick it with the foot. So just when you're confused and me showing some stats and football tables, I mean this sport. Now let's talk about Angular v4. v4 comes with a lot of performance improvements, and the code that gets generated is smaller, and as a result, it performs a lot faster. And if you create a brand new project and open package.json, you already see that we're using 4.1.0 across all the modules from Angular. If you have an existing project with NativeScript and Angular, you have to make some changes to it. So one of the things is you have to find the NativeScript module and change it from NativeScript Angular/platform to NativeScript Angular/NativeScript.module. Another one, the animation has been moved to a separate package. So if you want to use animations, what you have to do is add Angular/animations to your package.json. And then for your ng module, you have to import the NativeScript animations module and then add it to the imports, which pretty much looks something like that. So here we have the NativeScript module and NativeScript animations module that we've imported, and then we added to the ng module imports. Some other updates that we had was around templates. So template has been deprecated, so now we should use ng template instead. And the change is pretty simple. You just, wherever you have a bit of code that says template, just replace it with ng-template and you're ready to go. So one of the new cool things that came with Angular v4 is ng-if-else. So it's very similar to ng-if that you used to use so far, but this time we have an additional state that we can deal with. So the way you can use it is like, you can create yourself a placeholder, and then basically do ng-if, you provide a condition, and if that condition is true, then you can say then template A or whatever template name you want to give, and then else template B for when the condition is not true. And then you can, for example, create yourself an ng template, giving it, let's say, template A name, and then another one, give it template B, and then inside those templates, you can provide whatever components you want to have inside. And what's going to happen while the project runs is whenever the ng-if condition is true, a placeholder will be replaced with the first ng template. But if that condition is false, then basically the placeholder will be replaced with template B, which is pretty cool. And like the Cookie Monster would say, C is for code. So let me show you some code. So I already have an existing application. And inside my package.json dependencies, all my Angular dependencies are already set to version 4.1. In my app module, you can see NativeScript module now comes from NativeScript.module, and I'm also importing NativeScript animations module, and then I'm adding it to my imports. On the right-hand side, you can see I'm already running the application, and here's the HTML for it, and you can see that I'm getting a warning for a template, basically saying the template is deprecated. So that's an easy fix. I can just change it to ng-template, save that, and the warning is going to go away. No more warning this time. So next thing that we could do is, like, you could see there was like a slight delay when loading the table. I can actually make it even worse, so that it kind of like waits for a couple of seconds, which is not the best kind of behavior you'd want your users to experience. So what we can do is add a placeholder with an ng-if, it will do a cool thing. We'll basically check whether the table is undefined, and if it is, then we could say wait else show. And that should get us started. Then we're gonna add one ng template, which is gonna be for wait. So that's when we're waiting for the table to load. And then maybe while that's loading, we could add a message saying data is loading, please wait. You can be polite, why not? Save this, and then we can have another ng template around our main content of the page. So this time, this template will be called show. And let me wrap it around here, close that. So now if I save this and application reloads, we have like a nice message popping up, and then once data is loaded, that message goes away. So that's pretty cool. Why don't I actually stop this, because we'll be using these applications a few more times, and then come back to the presentation. Cool. So that was pretty cool. But the next thing I want to talk to you about is now inside Chrome DevTools, you can use the network tab, which works for Android. So if you run TNS-debug Android, you get this link that you can then copy and paste into Chrome, which will open Chrome DevTools, inside which you'll be able now to use the network tab for all of your communication. So what I can do is basically show you that in action. So let me open the link. I'm already running an Android application. So if I just start that, you can see we start getting some messages coming through. And inside my app, you can see that, let's say, we're trying to request competition 4 to 6 teams, or we could get a league table for the same competition. And then if I go into preview, for the league table, we can see the standings. You could see like the first team is Chelsea Football Club with 26 wins and 81 points, while let's say the last team is Sunderland AFC with only 21 points. So no surprise they're at the bottom of the league. You can also see the whole of the response, which is not formatted, so you can see like the whole JSON message, and then timing in terms of how long the whole thing actually took. So that's actually pretty cool. So let me get back to my presentation. One other thing I wanted to show you is code push. So code push is a thing from Microsoft that allows you to actually push updates into an application that is already deployed. And then there is a plugin called NativeScript Code Push, which is not a big surprise, which allows you to push anything that sits inside the app folder or the node modules. However, it won't work if you're trying to make updates to the NativeScript platform, or if any of the updates for your components require changes to the native library, because basically we just have to push like the JavaScript code or the HTML, etc. So if you want to use Code Push, first thing you have to install it. So just run an npm install for Code Push CLI. Then you have to register a user. So just run this command, and then you can actually start creating yourself a project. So if you want to use it with NativeScript, what you should do is just run a Code Push app add and create one for iOS and another for Android, so that we would have two separate repos for that. And that's pretty much the setup we need to do on the Code Push side. If you want to push any updates, just go to your application, run TNS build either for iOS or Android. And then if you want to push updates for iOS, you have to go inside your application, then go into the platform's iOS and the name of your NativeScript project. And then from inside there, you call Code Push release, and then provide the app name that you created in the previous steps, dash iOS app, and then provide an asterisk. And then we do something similar for Android, but this time, if you want to push updates for Android, we have to go into platforms, Android, src, main assets, and then we call a similar command to do the code push. If you want to check for updates from inside your application, basically we need to install the NativeScript code push plugin into your project. And then if you want to sync the code, you have to import code push and the sync status. And then by just calling codepush.sync and providing the deployment key, which you got from like the very first steps where you did code push add and then you add a project name. So if you provide that key over here, this will basically check whether there were any updates to your project, and if there were, you will automatically download those changes. And then what you'll be able to do is just restart the application, and then your app will have all the changes over there. So this time the Cookie Monster says C is for code push. So let me show you how that looks in action. All right, so what we have to do is the following. We need to first create a couple of keys for our code push. So we use code push CLI, code push add, and I'm gonna do one for iOS, and that should generate us a bunch of keys. And as well, we need another one for Android. And actually, for this part, I'm just gonna show you how it works in iOS. So we've got these two keys, and then my first component that I'm loading when I start the application is the tables component. So in here, I'm gonna import a few things from NativeScript code push to help us with the development. And that is the code push itself and the sync status. We also gonna need is iOS to help us decide whether we're running an iOS or an Android application. Okay, so we've got that, and inside engine init, I'm calling this this.sync function. So inside here, we first need to pick the right key. So I'm gonna use is iOS for that, and if we are in the iOS application, I'm gonna use the staging key from our iOS project, and if not, I'm gonna use our Android key. Okay, so that's how we decide which key to pick. And now we're just gonna use code push sync, and inside there as a parameter we have to pass in the deployment key, which is the key we provided just above. We can also provide a callback. So that callback will give us like a sync status. Okay, so we can use this sync status now to, let's say, print out a message, which basically just will show the sync status. Let's refactor it quickly. Let's save this. So this should reload our application. So checking for update, there's nothing to get. Okay, I'm gonna kill live sync now. Okay, so now I'm gonna make some changes outside of that. So let's find app.css, and I'm gonna change the theme to a forest theme, and also I'm gonna go to our tables HTML, and let's say change the action bar title to say football leagues, not soccer. I can save this. So now all I have to do is just run tnet build iOS, and then I'm gonna go inside the build folder. So cd platforms iOS NativeScript football. So the build is finished. Okay, so what I can do is just run code push release, and that will be footy iOS app for the version. So start, basically pick whichever version you want, and this is going to push the changes into the code push server. So it says it's gonna take about 15 seconds, maybe 20. So once that's done, I will be able to restart the application. So since we are triggering sync on John Unit, I'm just going to kill the app. I will start it again when this is finished, which will basically pull all the changes into my application. And then next time I restart the app, you'll be able to see the changes. So checking for updates. You should be notified that we found something. Yep, we're installing the update now, and the app has been installed. So if I kill the app now, come back and restart the application, voila, we have all the changes available just here. One more thing we can do from over here, rather than printing a message every time whether we found something or not, what we can do is just say if sync status equals sync status dot, and then we have like all the available states. So what we could do is just say if it's installed, we can actually throw an alert and say to the user, right, well, please restart your application. You can save that, and that basically reduce the amount of messages the user gets, or will only print out the message that they really need to see. So before I leave you, I just want to point you to some resources that you might find useful. If you want to use the NativeScript code push, you can get it from npm.js. Just search for NativeScript code push. If you want to learn more about code push itself, you can just go to microsoft.github.io/codepush. And if you would like to play with the project that I was demoing during my section, just go to github.com/sebavita/nativescriptfootball. Thank you for listening to me, and over to you, Rob.
Thank you, Sebastian, and thanks to both TJ and Jen as well. What a great set of demos and information around this fantastic release of NativeScript. Now, we are still taking questions on Twitter with the Ask NativeScript hashtag, so if you've been holding on to anything, now is the time to ask away. And while you're there, be sure to keep in touch with us going forward by following us at NativeScript. And before you leave us, I did want to leave you with some hints as to what you can expect from NativeScript in 2017. Now, our roadmap is always evolving to meet your needs, but I can share some cool developments we have coming up. And just remember, best laid plans and everything, our roadmap can and will change. What I'm about to show you includes some of our current plans, but we're always looking to add exciting new improvements. So next for us is a June release already. That's just next month if you're keeping track. We will be delivering Android snapshot builds. This will dramatically improve your build time on Android. We're also continuing to expand our Chrome DevTools integration, this time with the Elements tab. We will also continue to deliver more and more performance optimizations, as this is so critical to us and you. Next in August, we're going to continue our performance theme, this time doing a deep dive into Angular perf optimizations. We will also look at the CSS layer and see some significant performance boosts there. Noticing any performance-related themes here? We also plan on tackling a nagging issue for many of you, and that is a tab view with a persistent menu. And in September for the 3.3 release, we will, of course, release our 1.0 version of NativeScript Sidekick. We will also be looking to add full right-to-left support in our layouts, and adding a true cross-platform device permissions API. Remember, we will post the final webinar video to YouTube shortly, so if you've missed the beginning or any other part, you can find it there soon. Now, we're also launching the big 2017 NativeScript Community Survey today. If you'd like to contribute, please use the URL on the screen to give us your suggestions and feedback, really as we continue to work on our roadmap for this year and beyond. So you can access that survey starting today at tinyurl.com/may-ns-survey. Now, I know I've given you a variety of action items from today's webinar, but to summarize where you should go from here, make sure you sign up for the NativeScript Sidekick public beta at nativescript.org. tinyurl.com/nativescript-sidekick. You can take our community survey, again, at tinyurl.com/may-ns-survey. And if you're new to NativeScript or even just new to Angular, take a look at our 2 end-to-end getting started tutorials, or really anything NativeScript related at all at nativescript.org. All right, well, that is all for us today. We will be back in the coming weeks and months with more improvements and updates, so stay tuned. Thank you all for attending and have a fantastic day.